Have you ever noticed that some women never chase men, yet they often build calm, healthy relationships? Psychology offers several possible explanations. Not chasing doesn't automatically mean she's uninterested. Sometimes it reflects confidence, emotional security, and respect for genuine mutual connection. Many people believe pursuing someone proves love. Research suggests healthy relationships usually grow through shared effort, not constant one-sided pursuit. A woman with healthy self-esteem rarely measures her worth by someone's delayed replies, inconsistent attention, or unpredictable behavior. Psychologists have found that stronger self-esteem often reduces the need for constant reassurance because confidence comes from within. She appreciates affection, but she doesn't believe genuine love should require convincing someone to recognize her value every day. Instead of asking, "How can I make him choose me?" she quietly wonders, "Is he the right person for me?" That small change in perspective shifts her attention from seeking approval to evaluating compatibility and emotional health. She understands attraction cannot be forced. Real interest develops naturally through trust, respect, shared experiences, and emotional safety. When communication becomes consistently one-sided, she notices the pattern instead of endlessly making excuses for someone else's behavior. Healthy relationships involve reciprocity. Both people communicate, initiate conversations, and invest emotionally without one person carrying everything alone. She doesn't mistake mixed signals for romance. Inconsistent behavior usually creates confusion instead of emotional security and lasting trust. Rather than chasing disappearing attention, she protects her emotional energy and invests where appreciation feels genuine and consistent. Walking away isn't always about pride. Sometimes it's simply recognizing that mutual effort matters more than temporary excitement. She understands that reluctant attention rarely creates the stable foundation necessary for healthy, long-lasting emotional connection. Many women also build meaningful lives through careers, friendships, family, hobbies, creativity, fitness, and personal growth beyond romantic relationships. Because their identity isn't centered entirely on romance, relationships become meaningful additions instead of emotional necessities. Having purpose creates perspective. One disappointing interaction doesn't suddenly define her happiness, confidence, or future possibilities. She values companionship, yet she refuses to abandon personal dreams simply to keep someone's attention or approval. Research suggests that having meaningful goals often strengthens emotional well-being and reduces unhealthy dependence on romantic validation. She also observes carefully before becoming emotionally invested. Attractive words alone rarely outweigh consistent actions over time. Promises may sound impressive initially, but repeated behavior reveals someone's true character far more accurately than charming conversations. She quietly notices kindness, honesty, accountability, emotional maturity, and respect before deciding whether deeper commitment truly makes sense. Patience doesn't always mean emotional distance. Sometimes it's wisdom developed through experience, reflection, and learning from previous relationships. For her, choosing carefully isn't fear of love. It's understanding that compatibility matters long after first attraction begins to fade. Another reason many women don't chase is emotional resilience. They understand disappointment is uncomfortable, but it doesn't define their worth. Rejection may hurt for a while, yet emotionally resilient people recover without allowing one experience to shape their entire identity. Rather than convincing someone to stay, they accept that genuine interest cannot be created through persistence or endless explanations. Accepting reality early often prevents months of emotional confusion, false hope, and unnecessary heartbreak later. Psychological resilience helps people adapt when relationships don't work instead of becoming trapped by unrealistic expectations. Some women recognize the difference between chemistry and compatibility. Feeling excited isn't always the same as feeling emotionally safe. Strong attraction can exist alongside poor communication, conflicting values, or emotional inconsistency that eventually weakens the relationship. Instead of chasing intense emotions, they look for dependable behavior that builds trust over weeks, months, and years. Excitement captures attention, but consistency creates emotional security. Healthy relationships usually need both, not temporary sparks alone. That's why reliability often becomes more attractive than unpredictable affection, that appears only when someone feels convenient. Some people mistake boundaries for arrogance. Psychology suggests healthy boundaries actually protect emotional well-being and personal dignity. A boundary isn't meant to punish anyone. It's simply a clear statement about what someone is willing to accept. When respect repeatedly disappears, creating distance becomes an act of self-protection, rather than emotional revenge. Healthy boundaries reduce resentment because expectations become clearer before frustration quietly builds beneath the surface. Women who respect their own boundaries usually expect others to respect them too, creating healthier relationship dynamics. Another important factor is emotional regulation. They don't allow temporary feelings to control long-term relationship decisions. Feeling lonely one evening doesn't automatically mean contacting someone who repeatedly creates emotional uncertainty. Instead, they pause, reflect, and ask whether their emotions truly match the reality of the relationship. This habit reduces impulsive decisions that often lead to regret, confusion, and unnecessary emotional pain later. Research links stronger emotional regulation with healthier conflict resolution and greater satisfaction in close relationships. Many women also understand that silence communicates information. Someone's lack of effort can be meaningful by itself. They avoid inventing complicated explanations when consistent actions already provide a much clearer answer. Instead of analyzing every message endlessly, they pay attention to repeated patterns over time. Patterns usually reveal priorities better than isolated moments, charming words, or occasional grand romantic gestures. For emotionally mature women, clarity often feels far more valuable than chasing uncertainty disguised as romance. Interestingly, not chasing isn't always a conscious strategy. Sometimes it's simply a reflection of secure emotional attachment and inner stability. People with secure attachment generally feel comfortable expressing interest without depending entirely on another person's response for emotional balance. They appreciate closeness, yet they don't panic when someone needs space or responds less enthusiastically than expected. Their confidence comes from knowing one person's opinion cannot determine their overall value or future happiness. Because they aren't driven by fear of abandonment, they rarely feel compelled to constantly prove their worth. This emotional security often creates calmer relationships built on trust instead of anxiety, guessing games, or emotional pressure. Another important factor is self-awareness. They regularly examine their own feelings before reacting to someone else's behavior. Instead of asking, "Why isn't he choosing me?" they first ask, "Is this relationship actually right for me?" That question shifts attention from seeking approval to making thoughtful decisions based on personal values and emotional well-being. Self-awareness helps people recognize unhealthy patterns before those patterns become emotionally exhausting habits. Some women also understand the difference between effort and overfunctioning in a relationship. Making plans, showing affection, or starting conversations is healthy. Carrying the entire relationship alone usually isn't. When one person consistently gives while the other consistently receives, emotional imbalance often develops over time. Healthy relationships allow both partners opportunities to contribute, initiate, support, and invest in each other's happiness. Mutual effort doesn't require perfect equality every day, but it does require consistent willingness from both people. Women who don't chase often recognize that love cannot thrive where only one person keeps repairing every disconnect. They also understand that patience differs from waiting endlessly for someone to become emotionally available. Hope becomes unhealthy when it repeatedly ignores clear evidence that someone's actions never match their promises. Choosing to leave an unhealthy situation isn't giving up. Sometimes it's choosing emotional health over emotional uncertainty. Psychological well-being often improves when people stop investing heavily in relationships lacking consistent mutual commitment. Another overlooked reason is experience. Past relationships often teach valuable lessons about emotional patterns and personal boundaries. Experience doesn't always make someone guarded. It can simply make them wiser about recognizing healthy relationship dynamics earlier. Instead of repeating familiar mistakes, they become more intentional about where they invest their emotional energy. Their decisions aren't driven by fear alone. They're shaped by reflection, growth, and a clearer understanding of personal needs. Over time, they realize protecting inner peace often creates more fulfilling relationships than endlessly chasing uncertain possibilities. It's important to remember that not chasing someone doesn't automatically make a woman emotionally mature or psychologically healthy. Sometimes people avoid pursuing relationships because of fear, painful experiences, social anxiety, or avoidant attachment patterns. Psychology reminds us that similar behaviors can have very different motivations depending on someone's personality, experiences, and emotional history. That's why understanding the reason behind behavior is always more valuable than judging the behavior itself. Healthy confidence creates openness. Emotional avoidance creates distance. The actions may appear similar, but the motivations are completely different. Confident women remain capable of expressing interest without sacrificing their dignity or ignoring their personal boundaries. They don't believe making the first move is weak. They simply expect genuine effort to continue from both people afterward. Psychological research doesn't suggest one person should always pursue, while the other simply waits to be chosen. Healthy relationships usually develop through shared curiosity, honest communication, mutual respect, and consistent emotional investment from both partners. When both people feel responsible for nurturing the relationship, trust grows naturally and misunderstandings become easier to resolve. This balance reduces emotional exhaustion because neither partner feels responsible for carrying the relationship alone. Women who don't chase often value emotional peace more than temporary excitement created by uncertainty and inconsistent attention. They understand that emotional calm isn't boring. It's often a sign of safety, trust, and psychological security. Real intimacy grows through honesty, reliability, empathy, and repeated positive experiences rather than dramatic emotional highs and lows. They would rather miss an incompatible relationship than lose themselves trying to make it work alone. Choosing self-respect doesn't mean rejecting love. It means refusing relationships that repeatedly compromise emotional well-being. Their standards aren't designed to impress others. They're built to protect long-term happiness, emotional health, and personal values. Over time, they learn that healthy love rarely requires constant convincing, chasing, or proving their worth. Instead, it grows through shared effort, emotional availability, kindness, respect, and genuine commitment from both people. Psychological research consistently shows that secure relationships depend more on trust and reciprocity than relentless pursuit. The healthiest connections aren't built by winning someone over. They're built by choosing each other repeatedly through everyday actions. Perhaps the strongest form of confidence is accepting that not every connection is meant to become a relationship. Sometimes walking away isn't losing someone. It's creating space for healthier relationships that genuinely align with your values. When self-respect guides your choices, relationships become opportunities for connection instead of sources of constant validation. Not chasing a man doesn't necessarily mean she's playing hard to get. Sometimes it simply reflects self-respect, emotional balance, and a desire for relationships built on mutual effort.
Stop chasing motivation. Start understanding your mind. Subscribe to Inner Violet and learn how to think, not just react.